Feliz Viernes, RevvED community. This is Christy Moreno, Chief Community Advocacy and Impact Officer at Revolución Educativa. Revolución Educativa is a Latino education advocacy organization supporting Latino parents, Latino students, Latino educators, and the community at large. We strongly believe in equitable educational opportunities for our families and for our students, and that's why we're here. This is another episode of Revved Up, and we have been highlighting our Impacto Changemaker awardees over the last several weeks. And today I have a super special guest, one of our not just nominees, but awardees, Verónica Rodriguez-Mendez. Bienvenida, Verónica. It's great having you here today.
Hi, gracias. Thank you for having me here. And I'm really excited to have this conversation and just get to know a little bit more about each other's work and how to move the community forward.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I want to just briefly share what the Impacto Changemaker Awards are. We hosted our first ever awards celebration June 2nd of this year. The community nominated 25, well, more than 25. We actually just had to select 25 Latinos who are doing boots on the ground, wonderful work, supporting our Latino community. And so it was great honoring them, celebrating. But at the same time, I always like to point this out. We came out there with a pledge and a commitment to support each other's work because we strongly believe in building sustained and collective power. And we know we can't do this alone. We have to do it working together for the betterment of our communities. Veronica works at KU. University of Kansas. She's the Transfer and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Program Manager at the Edwards campus, correct?
Yes, I am.
Tell us what you do there.
Well, one of the things that I work in my job is that I move forward diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives and really identifying what are some barriers or policies that are at our institution that we need to really ask ourselves, are these equity advancing and what do we have to change to make sure that that is the case? And so we do a lot of work with that and also supporting our students at the institution and making sure that not only are they our students, but are they meeting their career goals? Are they graduating and going to the next step that they hope to take? And so a lot of my work really focuses on that. I also work with transfer, which I also know that is also diversity, equity, and inclusion work. Very important work to do to make sure that our students who are at the community college know that there is an option to go and get a bachelor's degree. And I work on making sure that that transition from community college to KU is seamless, right? How do you make it so there's less roadblocks? And so you don't have to guess what is it that I'm supposed to do next, but that you have an idea and have a path forward.
So I love that. How long have you been doing this for?
So I've been doing this for a year, and then doing retention work for KU prior to that, but in another capacity.
Wonderful. And what does that relationship look like? Are you directly speaking with students or do you work with a team? How does that work? What does it look? Paint us the picture.
Yeah, I work with a really wonderful team at the KU Edwards campus. We have a recruiting team as well as transfer ambassadors. A lot of our transfer ambassadors are actually community college students themselves who help students learn about their transition and support them in that process at a peer level. So I work with that team, and then a transfer coordinator who does a lot of the recruitment at our community colleges and works with our academic advisors, making sure that they have those connections, and then making sure that all of our transfer guides are up to date and that students know exactly what they need in making those connections with the community. So we're kind of like a bridge between like admissions and advising and recruiting. So we do multiple things in terms of how do we reach students who want to take that next step and give them as much information as possible to make that happen.
Through this work and all your experience in doing this, your current role, working with a team and your previous roles, what does this process look like for Latino students? What have been like the learnings? Where have you had the opportunity to grow and better that experience for Latino students and their parents and families supporting them through this process?
I think including parents and families is so important because that adds another layer of support for that student. as they're trying to make that move. And oftentimes when they're going to community college, is very local, it's close to home, it feels a little bit more familiar, and maybe moving to our campus feels like, oh, I need to learn a whole new thing, I need to figure out what's happening here, this works a little bit different than I thought. And so, like, if we can support our Latino Latinx students in that process and have those conversations, it also helps that I'm bilingual, so we can just break that potential barrier where we can just have a real conversation. ¿Qué es lo que quieres hacer? ¿Qué vamos a hacer? ¿Cuál es el próximo paso? And we can just relate not only on that cultural language level, but also figure, like, I've had similar things that I had to learn. Yeah. And I'm in a position to be able to do that for somebody else. And starting the conversation there is often like, oh, okay, we can connect here. So we make it a lot more personal. I'm in a position where our campus is smaller. And so I'm able to do that for more students. And so it's really great. And also our transfer ambassadors do too. A lot of our transfer ambassadors are bilingual, either using American Sign Language or Spanish. Wow. And so we do that intentionally so that those connections to our communities are important to have, and also making sure that we serve the communities that we are a part of.
Yes, that's how I got little goosebumps, because this is just so powerful, and I love how relatable this experience can be because of who you are, because of your identity, because of your bilingualism, and all of that. So tell us a little bit. You said I myself needed this type of navigation and support. So let's go back and share with us, what was your upbringing like? What was your educational experience like growing up? And share with us some insight as to how did all of that journey lead to who you are today and what you're doing serving our communities.
Oh, absolutely. So I'm Boricua, I'm from Puerto Rico. Any Puerto Rican you meet, they'll be like, yo soy Boricua, usually one of us has a flag somewhere. I'm surprised I don't have one in my background. And so I did my K through 12 education in Puerto Rico. So I did not grow up in the mainland US, even though we're a territory. And with that comes some different dynamics in terms of our educational systems. So my support also looked kind of dual, right? So I was like in terms of my transition to college, but I want to talk about my experience in Puerto Rico and then how that really informs the work that I do. I think it was a blessing that I was able to grow up in a place where when I went to school, I learned about my history through my people's lens, with my community. I ate arroz con habichuela at lunch, and so I didn't all of my culture was included in my upbringing, and I can't say what a blessing that is. I had an amazing group of teachers that really invested in me, and counselors. And I can't say that that's exactly what everybody gets, but I have to acknowledge the privileges and blessings that I had in my upbringing to bring that into context, into how that impacted my journey in a positive way, and maybe why that is important for me to do for other people. I also think that it informs some of the community work that I do and why that is important for me to do it. And I'm happy to talk about that later. But in terms of where I grew up in my transition here, I went to college in the US. I had no idea of first of all, how college would work for me, how I would fit in. And then secondly, then we have this new context of it's a different way a higher education institution works. And I hadn't had anybody in my family who had done that before. I was the first one to leave. There were lots of tears. And I had to figure that out. And if it wasn't for people at the university who were part of my bridge program, or who I met with weekly, or part of my TRIO experience, because I was also a TRIO alum, the TRIO works, then I don't think that I would have successfully navigated higher education. And that gave me a lot of purpose to then pursue a career in higher ed and student support, and keeps me here. It keeps me doing this work for other students. It keeps me working towards removing barriers. It keeps me working to make that experience better. And keeps me working to make it accessible, because we want to make sure that you can get here. and that you graduate from here. And what that experience looks like, we can help curate and make it your own.
Yes.
But that's very important to me in terms of my journey. And I bet we all have lots of different aspects, but how I get to higher ed, that's truly the people and the community that invested in me and allowed me to utilize what I learned to make a positive impact in my community.
Thank you for sharing. I can relate to a lot of what you're sharing. So I grew up in Mexico City, pre-K through high school. My education was there, both in private and in public schools. And I also came to the United States for college. And I absolutely, contrary to you, I didn't really have a support system or people in the schools where I was. That I could actually rely on for counseling, for understanding how to navigate, the systems. But my experience in entering the world of education and the world of advocacy was actually through my kids, because I became a mom that, I didn't grow up in the schools here and so as a mom, I was like, well, I also need to understand how navigating, the school system for my own children. And in that process, and my own journey as a parent and advocating for my children who were classified as English language learners, just for the sake of the fact that we speak Spanish at home, I started advocating and realized, like, there's many other families that are also experiencing what I am. And if I'm seeking answers to my questions, why not bring everyone else along and like do this publicly and start advocating not only for my own but for the others. And so I really love how you and I do too, like, tie in our personal experience and take the learnings from that to better the experience for others. So thank you for sharing, because I do relate to that. When we talk about supporting our immigrant communities, our international students, our newcomers, I think it's always very important to learn from those who had been successful, right? Like, one thing is calling the inequities out and seeing where the gaps are, but the other one is working towards solutions and working towards bridging the gaps that exist and bettering those systems so that, as students, whether they're in preschool or they're going through higher education, have a smoother journey through the whole process. I really love that you mentioned that family support is super important for students that are making big decisions, especially like in higher education, right? Because not everyone has that. And we look for people like you and for the ambassadors and people that are there to actually help support that, that process when families are not there at times too. So tell us a little bit about how you, as a student that came here for higher education, how did you find that purpose in what you do now? I mean, you've kind of shared a little bit, and in fact, the fact that you were blessed and have the privilege of having people that helped you. But in seeing and experiencing and witnessing several who don't have those people, like, how did you just say, like, this is where I belong and this is what I want to do? Was there a particular instance or a moment in your life and in your journey where you said, like, this is what I'm going to do with my life, at least for now?
I don't know if there was, but I grew up with a fierce mother who was at every protest you could think of, who was creating spaces. And I think I had a really wonderful example from a young age where I saw that, and you could see me at little protests. I have pictures everywhere. And I think there was something in there that was always brewing, that if there was something that I needed to do, I needed to say something and do something about it. And I think that I found several causes in college. I think, I had this personal experience, but then I kept seeing injustice. And then I'm like, but we need to do something about it. And nobody was necessarily standing up.
Yeah.
Or people didn't know what to do. And so the way that I found kind of my voice was actually kind of this collective power of, like, people saying, I feel the same way. I feel the same way. And us um, um, I'm trying to find um, the particular policy, but I think it was HB 1070, and organizing at our college when I was in Iowa, and it was this particular policy targeting undocumented folks in the southern border states, particularly Arizona. And so we were like, what can we do to bring some light to this and make sure that doesn't happen where we currently live, and also bring light. And I think that was kind of my first time while I was in the mainland US, where like, oh, this is my turn and the torch has been passed to me. And I think that's when that work started. And then I found the path to that in my work, and in my personal life. So it became this kind of dual purpose in which everything is very much aligned in terms of what I want to do. I don't know if there's one particular thing, but I could say my first visual and vivid memory of, okay, I can do this. I have the power to engage in this work, and it's meaningful work. It was then.
I thank you. I love that you brought up your mom. At RevvED, we support parents quite a bit, and the first thing we do is like, you already have power. You're a leader in your household, you're a leader in your community. How can we make sure that you feel supported and that you don't feel alone when you are fighting the good fights, and getting in good trouble a lot of times, because we have to, like you said, stand up for the inequities that we see, or we have to tear down those barriers that are limiting access to a variety of things, right? Whether it's services, whether it's education, whether it's the acknowledgement and implementation of our rights. And so tell me just a little bit, don't spend too much time because I don't want to deviate the conversation, but I'm very curious about your mama, and what her drive and her energy and how that impacted you. We strongly believe that parents are experts in their children, and that as parents we're role models for our children, and clearly your mama was is your role model. And so tell us a little bit about your mom.
So my mom is Julia Rivera Figueroa.
Julia.
For about 10 years, she spent more than that doing a lot of advocacy work around disability justice and children, and bringing a lot of attention to Congress in Puerto Rico to make sure that there was more support, public monies going to support students with disabilities in the K through 12 system. She started this organization called CHAD in Puerto Rico, specifically for students who are neurodivergent, and lack some support systems in Puerto Rico to support them in the classroom. And also those supports never went into the private school sector either. So there was a group of students who never got support. And so really advocated, went to Congress and had stuff passed.
Wow.
To support students. And to this moment, a month ago, she was protesting on the beach for other things, specifically the pseudo privatization of beaches in Puerto Rico, even though they're from the people. So she is a person who never stays home when there's something to bring attention to, and really spent a lot of her time doing that. And I had a great example in her, and I still do it. My younger brother is also doing some advocacy work in Puerto Rico, and very involved in working towards dismantling gentrification in the capital, and what that looks like and how it impacts folks who've lived there for generations. So like all of us are somehow involved in this because we saw a really great example in her and continue to see that in her work.
That is beautiful. And it sounds like it's in your genes, right?
Yes.
To bring positive impact to people's lives, and specifically those that are, pushed out a lot of times, or intentionally excluded from receiving equitable, services, or just attention, right? Like this is what constituents must receive, equally and equitably. So I love hearing that it is something that not only was modeled to you, but it continues to be a driving force for the work that you do. Tell us a little bit about what you do outside of, your official title and your paid gig. So what other things are you interested in? Do you work with other organizations? Are you on any leadership roles, boards, etc.?
Awesome. So I also, as an unpaid institutional service, I do support services for undocumented students for all of our campuses at KU. I also serve as a president for the Latinx Faculty Staff Council, and I've been serving in that role for a long time at KU now. And then I started a Spanish play group for the city, and I do that as volunteer service work for the city of Lawrence. And just started it as I was like, I'm a new mom. I'm trying to make sure that my kid, in a space where she's one in a minority, and she didn't have the experience I had where I was amongst my people growing up, where she can have a connection not only to her language, but she can have a connection to her culture and other folks who share that in with her. And so I started that with the city as a grassroots effort. I was like, hey, I want to do this, got support, and it's been going strong for over a year now. And I'm really, really excited about what it can continue to do to support folks here.
How old is your daughter?
She's 2. She's 2 years old.
She's a toddler.
She's a tot, and that's a lot of work.
Yes. That's amazing. Tell us what are you seeing? Who are the people that are joining the play group, and what do you do in that play group? Is it just like fun, or is there like a very intentional community building aspect to it? What's the group like?
Beautiful. So the play group really started as a way to connect families and their children to resources in our community that provide services, especially services in Spanish, and then allow for kiddos to use Spanish in a play environment, because 3 to 5, they're not going to sit down and learn. They're wanting to play through fun, and engaging parents and children in that process together is great. I mean, most recently, our last play group, like for example, they run for meeting at a playground. Our last play group was a show and tell where all the kids could bring their cultural outfits, share something from their culture, and we have lots of pictures of them like learning to tambor uruguayo, like trying to play a tambor uruguayo, or using a molcajete together and learning all that language together in a fun environment, eating conchas, empanadas, arepas. We get together over food. And I think all of us want more of those services. So a lot of us not only want that social connection, but there's an interest in starting a bilingual program or bilingual track that is not necessarily a deficiency model, like, oh, you need to learn English, but a way to uplift both languages so that they can be able to do that in a positive and encouraging educational environment. And we have found that collectively we can do that more and with more strength if we come together and do that. And I think one of the goals that we hope that we can prove that there's an interest, that we can prove that there's an importance in bilingual education, because it could start in Spanish, but I bet we have other folks in our community. We have a strong Vietnamese population. That will benefit from supported bilingual education through the city. And so there's always like an interest. What if we get an immersion program? There's amazing language immersion schools around our country. And so we do a lot of different things. And so we hope to continue to do more advocacy and know that this is a group that will continue to grow, and we grow every weekend. And we also work with our public library to provide cuentacuentos and Spanish reading times for the city. And so the more we say this is where we are and this is what we need, then we can hopefully get the resources that we need to move forward. Oftentimes we need to make space for ourselves and say we're here, this is, and claim what needs to be claimed in a space, because folks don't always think about our needs, and they don't always center our needs as a community, as Latinos or as Spanish speakers. And so we need to figure out how to make space, how to make change, and how to move forward as a collective.
Yes, I just love every word that comes out of your mouth. I'm very excited. That whole play group thing sounds like another full-time job to me. I don't know how you do it all.
It is, it's a labor of love, but I'm really, we've gotten a lot of commitment. We've gotten donations. Like recently we were able to give free book bags and lunch bags to kids. Wow. in our play group, we were able to fund a food. And so the community um, is really coming out for us and donating their time, space. And so I'm really grateful that I'm in a city that I say I need something. I may need to push a little bit more, but when it's there, they provide. And so far, it's been a positive experience, but
Oh
a
yeah.
labor of love.
Yeah.
But
Yes. Does the group have a name?
right now, it's a Spanish language play group, and you can find a lot of our stuff on social media or even through the Lawrence Public Library site. And we also do a lot of outreach to the community, so pediatrician's office and churches to let them know what's happening. But yeah, we're trying to call it something. I think we haven't decided until um, we come together and figure that out. But I hope we come up with something cute, huh?
Yeah. That's why I was curious. And I'm also like just eager to share with others who might be interested in replicating what you're doing, in their own cities, in their own towns. And so it's beautiful work, and I commend you for that. And especially because now that you're a mom, you're even more committed to having your child be part of an experience like this. So that is just beautiful. I have one last question to you. I know it's Friday. We've all have a lot going on and trying to wrap up the week. But I was just curious on what did it feel like receiving an Impacto Changemaker award? Were you expecting it? Like, was it a total surprise when we all came together? What was the energy like for you, and what does it mean?
To be honest, I was very surprised, and it's one of those moments where you're like, okay, I'm doing something. It's like very affirming.
Yeah,
And when I was at the recognition ceremony, I can't say how beautiful, how powerful, how impactful it is to see so many community members really invested in us, in each other, in the community, and the brilliance in
yeah.
that one space. Era para pelos,
Sí,
like.
sí, sí, sí.
And as you kept hearing everything that folks were doing, you kept wondering, like, why haven't these initiatives and this work been uplifted before? And I'm so grateful for what you are doing to really uplift, elevate, and showcase the amazing and incredible things that are happening
Yeah,
with folks doing this work.
yeah,
Oftentimes, it's on the sidelines and maybe not there's not quite a spotlight on this work, and you all have done that in this incredible way. And not only that, but connected us in a way that we can then collectively move forward on
yeah.
things that matter. I have made so many connections and continuously work with other folks who might be doing similar work after uh,
Yes.
meeting the other change makers and also the folks in your team. And so, wow, how impactful. And I just hope that you all continue to do that, because I don't see that done as often and in these spaces. And I'm grateful for the honor. I'm grateful for the opportunity. And I'm grateful not only for the opportunity to engage in this work, but to support the work that y'all are doing and other community members are doing.
Yes.
I think it's an honor.
Thank you for sharing that. Like I said, we center all of our efforts, and we put our kids at the center. They're our North Star, and everything we do is with them in mind, not only their future but their present, like paying attention to the things that are impacting the lives of our children right now, because we know that what's happening right now is going to have a ripple effect in their future. And so we want to change whatever is negative into a positive, whatever is inequitable, and we know that we cannot do this work alone. This is community work. And what better way to do that than recognizing those that have, like you, that have been doing the work in their own field, in their own space, and joining hands and moving things forward as a collective. Because we're all obviously committed to our missions, we're all impacting our communities, but when we work together, our impact can be larger, it can be louder, it can be more visible, and we can actually move the needle at a policy level, even a legislative level, like you at a citywide level, right? And so that's what we're looking for in elevating and highlighting people like you that are committed and doing this work, because a lot of times this work is not very glamorous, and a lot of times it's very emotionally draining as well. And if we know that we have each other's backs and that we're working together, and if you have an event and I can come and support, and if I have an event and you can come and support, then we know that we have a good support system that holds us up all the time. So thank you so much, Veronica. It's been a pleasure talking to you. We will continue to follow your work. If there's anything that our community here in Kansas City, because you're in Lawrence, can do to support the work you're doing over there, please let us know, and we'd be happy. You know what? I kind of want to go check out that play group just to kind of see if we can do something like that over here. Because I know it is much needed. And so again, thank you for being an inspiration. Thank you for being a bright light and in the path of many that I know that you've impacted through the work you do. And again, thank you for also sharing the story of your family and how advocacy is definitely part of just your identity and comes natural to you. Muchas gracias. Espero que tengas un feliz viernes. Comunidad RevvED, gracias por acompañarnos. We are happy here to have had a conversation with Verónica Rodriguez-Mendez. And we look forward to seeing you next week. So have a great weekend. Adios.